at risk, and their job has never been harder. Those brave men and women risk their lives every day to protect the American citizens from the consequences of illegal border crossings. Together we bear witness to the worst border crisis in the U.S. history. There has been more than 4 million illegal border crossings since Joe Biden has taken office. That's not the worst part. Now that Title 42 may end, we're bracing for a tsunami. People talk about 18,000 crossings in a day. That would mean 13 million more illegal crossings for the rest of the term of Joe Biden if nothing changes. Think about that. 17 million more illegal entries into our country. Just last week, Secretary Mayorkas testified under oath that yes, the border is secure. I'm here to tell you it is not. We spent the day with border agents. I asked each and every one if this border is secure. They laughed. They said it is not. It is one of the worst points in the history of this nation. We just went to a bridge in El Paso where 70,000 people have come across in the last 7 weeks. And the Secretary of Homeland thinks this border is secure. For the last 2 years, President Joe Biden and the Democrats running Congress has pushed open border policies and waged baseless attacks on our border agents. The actions of this administration have empowered cartels, drug smugglers, human traffickers, and terrorist organizations all around the world. Just last week, U.S. Customs and Border agents off the coast of Puerto Rico came under fire in the line of duty. One agent was fatally shot, while 2 other agents were wounded. In March 2021, we came down after the new administration had lifted those policies. We visited the border. I warned, having learned from the Border Patrol agents, of the suspects on the terrorist watch list that were coming across. The amount of fentanyl that they hadn't seen in the past now coming across. We held a press conference. We advised not just America, but to the members of Congress. Members of the Democratic Congress said I was lying, that there weren't people on the terrorist watch list. Congressman Gallegos said that, who sits on armed services. Since that time period, more than 107 terrorist suspects have been apprehended crossing this border. Fentanyl is poisoning and killing Americans in every single community. Americans have died from overdoses. Secretary Mayorkas would like you to believe that the people committing these crimes are just in the search of a better life. How many people have not been caught? In 42 days, a united Republican House takes control. In 42 days, we end one-party Democrat rule in Washington. A new House Republicans will work to stop Joe Biden's assault on our laws, our borders, and our border agents. We will use the power of the purse and the power of the subpoena. Now let me be clear. Those responsible for this disaster will be held accountable. I've spoken today, again, to Congressman Jim Jordan and Jamie Comer, the future chair of Oversight and Judiciary Committee. And they have my complete support to investigate the collapse of our border and the shutdown of ICE enforcement nationwide. Under Secretary Mayorkas, his deliberate suspensions of our laws have proved deadly. Fentanyl is now flowing in record amounts. Today, 300 Americans will be poisoned and die. Tomorrow, 300 more. It is the equivalent of an airline crashing each and every day in America. But again, he does nothing. If an airline crashed 3 days in a row, the entire nation would say we have a real challenge. We have a crisis. We have a disaster. We have to do something about it. But he continues to lie to the American public. We have lost operational control of our southern border, empowering drug cartels and human traffickers. They have fired shots at our National Guard. They put AK-47s pointing at helicopters. They have burned and hung and raped the women and caught them on fire. And again, Secretary Mayorkas thinks the border is secure. He has blocked ICE and Border Patrol from enforcing our laws while vilifying them at the same time. Do you realize what that has done? In the last 10 days, 3 Border Patrol agents have committed suicide, a total of 14 this year, a number we have not seen in decades. He ended the Remain in Mexico policy and wants to end Title 42. His actions have produced the greatest wave of illegal immigration in recorded history. Our country may never recover from Secretary Mayorkas' dereliction of duty. This is why today I am calling on the Secretary to resign. He cannot and must not remain in that position. If Secretary Mayorkas does not resign, House Republicans will investigate every order, every action, and every failure will determine whether we can begin impeachment inquiry. If Secretary Mayorkas was in charge of any company, he would have been fired by now for the failures of what he has caused. The American public deserve more, deserve better, and expect more within their government. Enough is enough. We will do whatever it takes. This is my commitment to the men and women of the Border Patrol and to the citizens of the United States of America. With that, I'd like to introduce Congressman Tony Gonzalez, who represents this area, represents more than 40% of the entire border, and was recently re-elected by more than 14%. But what he has done is brought more members down to the border to educate them. And after January 3rd, no longer will members have to come down to the border to tour. We will hold our hearings at the border so the Democrats can no longer hide from the crisis they have created. I bring you Tony Gonzalez.
Amen. Thank you, future Speaker McCarthy. You know, I've hosted 16 delegations at the border. I've hosted Kevin McCarthy 3 times. And what you see is change is coming. And change is going to be led by the people standing right here. It's Thanksgiving week. People are doing a lot of different things. And what are House Republicans doing? We're going to the epicenter of the border crisis, and we're highlighting 2 things. One, highlighting the men and women in green that are rolling up their sleeves and fighting every day for this country to keep it safe. 2, we're highlighting the failures of this administration. On Thanksgiving week, we have to be thankful for a lot of things. Kevin McCarthy mentioned the suicides, 14 suicides. This is historic. It's no longer migrants that are dying at the border, it's Americans. And those Americans are wearing green uniforms. Rocky Seriano, here in El Paso, recently committed suicide. This is an epidemic. This should get us all united. You know, tomorrow is going to be the 6-month anniversary of Uvalde. And what people don't realize is Uvalde went into lockdown. The schools in Uvalde went into lockdown 48 times before that school violence occurred. 48 times. Guess what? I see that same occurrence happening all over the district. Change is coming. That day, a week later, I hosted the President of the United States. And I pulled him aside and I said, Mr. President, now isn't the time, but I would like to visit with you in the White House to see how Republicans and Democrats can work together to secure this border. My staff has called the White House every week since then. I urge the Biden administration, please work with the House Republican leadership to secure this border because lives are on the line. You know, these 16 border trips, they've been to talk about security. You know what we're not talking about, which I wish we would? Commerce and trade. Guess what? There's so much more that El Paso has to offer the world. Reshoring, you know, taking stuff from that's happening in China, reshoring it to the United States and our partners in Mexico. We don't have those discussions. Why? Because our border is wide open and people are dying every single day. These are the discussions I wish we would have in Congress. But it starts somewhere. Change is coming. That change is now. That change does not happen without those that are willing to roll up their sleeves and fight for it. With that, I'd like to introduce my good friend, Dr. Brian Babin.
Yay. Good job.
That's it. Thank you, Tony. Great to be in your district down here. But alarming to see what we're seeing at the border. I want to thank Speaker Designate Kevin McCarthy for having us down here and magnifying, or not really magnifying, but just exposing to sunlight exactly what is going on down here at the border in our great country and seeing what's happening. Anyone paying attention at all can see that Joe Biden's responsible for the worst border crisis in the history of our country. No matter how many times Secretary Mayorkas lies about it, under oath, we know that the border is simply not secure. The truth is, the southern border barely exists anymore. The Border Patrol isn't allowed to do their job. What heroes we have that we've met with today that work for our Border Patrol, but not allowed to do their job. This administration has tied their hands so tight that catch and release sometimes is their only option at this point. We've completely lost operational control over this border in spite of what Mayorkas has told us. Transnational criminal organizations, the Mexican drug cartels have taken over. Women and children being assaulted, raped, trafficked, synthetic opioids pouring into the United States, and now we have over 100,000 dead Americans every single year. And as our Speaker Designate said, it's like an airliner crashing, a 737 crashing every single day, killing 300 Americans. Just last week, FBI Director Wray said that they seized in one vehicle interdiction, enough fentanyl to kill the equivalent of everyone in the entire state of Pennsylvania. More than 100 suspected terrorists have been caught crossing the border so far in this year alone. How many were not caught in the nearly 1 million gotaways of the Biden administration's first 2 years in office? All this is on top of the millions of unvetted illegal aliens who have been apprehended and then blindly released into the country. They've been flown, housed, fed, educated, medicated, and incarcerated, all on the taxpayer's dime. The Democrats have zero interest in stopping this. They have zero interest in addressing the root causes of mass migration, their favorite excuse, or about the safety and security of you or me or our great country. This is their crisis. They own it. And there's nothing humane or compassionate about it at all. Migrants are dying. Border agents are dying. Texas Army National Guard members are dying, and the American citizens are dying. The entire situation is devastating, and Biden and his administration simply must be stopped. You know, in everyday life, common American citizens are held accountable and liable for their actions. Well, it's long past time, folks, that Biden and Mayorkas are held to that same standard. The American people are done with lies. They're done with a lack of action. And they're done with their communities being torn apart. Enough is enough. Republicans will do whatever we have to take the bull by the horns and secure our border. And I hope that we can start seeing protection of our sovereignty, American citizens, and the migrants themselves. Thank you, and I'd like to introduce my fellow Texan, August Pfluger, Congressman. Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank Speaker-designate McCarthy for coming to the border and caring about Border Patrol agents and the security of every American. The system is flashing red. These were the words that the 9/11 Commission uncovered. The system was flashing red in the days leading up to 9/11, and the system is flashing red right now. And yet we are mocked. House Republicans have been mocked by other Democrats, by House Democrats. We were mocked last year when we came right here to El Paso and uncovered the fact that we had dozens of known and suspected terrorists who are entering this country, and now that number is over 100. And yet we were mocked. The system was indeed flashing red, and it still is. And yet Secretary Mayorkas is mocking us. Last week, as a member of the Committee on Homeland Security, I personally asked Secretary Mayorkas if the border was secure. And he laughed. He laughed at me, and he laughed at others on the committee, and asserted that the border was secure, that we had operational control of the border, which is completely false. We have talked to dozens of Border Patrol agents today, just today, and hundreds others over the past 2 years. Not a single agent today has claimed that the border is secure. In fact, they say it is the most open that it has been in their entire career. They say that they don't feel appreciated or valued by their own leadership, that they come to work and they ask themselves, why am I coming back to work only to be unappreciated, not given the resources, and not allowed to do their jobs? We were mocked by the Secretary of Homeland Security when asking questions about how to secure our homeland. Mr. Secretary, we have one message for you. You need to resign. You need to allow these good men and women of the Border Patrol to do their jobs that they so desperately want to do. You and the President have abandoned Texans, you have abandoned Americans, and you have certainly abandoned the hardworking men and women of the United States Border Patrol. And with that, I'd like to introduce my good friend, also a Texan, Dan Crenshaw from Houston, Texas.
Thank you, August. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're here today asking for the resignation of Alejandro Mayorkas because he's created and allowed a crisis. And that crisis, we're here in El Paso, has cost just this city millions of its own taxpayer dollars to deal with the crisis. It means that citizens in El Paso cannot sleep at night because Biden and this administration will not secure the border. This past October, we had more crossings by people on the terrorist watch list than we did in 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 combined. There have been 4 million encounters at the border since Biden took office, and he doesn't care. Across the river sits some of the most capable, best equipped, best funded, and most ruthless and dangerous organizations in the world, the cartels. See, this is more than an immigration crisis, it's a national security crisis. And they facilitate this crisis, and worse than that, they flood our country with deadly fentanyl that kills nearly 80,000 Americans a year. They're at war with us, and we do nothing. Last week, I introduced legislation to declare war on the cartels, to give the government the tools needed to go after them and hunt them down, and sanction anyone who aids and abets them. They don't fear us, and that needs to change. I actually want to give the cartels and their leaders a very direct message in a way that they might understand. A los carteles, a Ismael Mario Zambarda García, y Nemesio Seguero Cervantes y Juan Pablo Ledesma y los demás, ya se acabó su vacación, porque ahora serán perseguidos. Vendremos por su dinero, vendremos por sus mansiones, vendremos por su libertad. Ya no vamos a ignorar sus crímenes contra nuestro país y nuestros ciudadanos. Ya no se pueden esconder y ahora va a acabar su reino de terror. I'd like to introduce now my good friend, fellow veteran from Tennessee, Mark Green.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan, and Speaker-designate McCarthy, thank you for the invitation to come. And I want to say a special thank you to the hosts today, the Border Patrol agents who put their lives on the line every day for the freedom and prosperity and security of this great country. Folks might wonder why a Tennessee congressman is here in Texas at the border. Well, let me say it's not without precedent. In fact, the very first congressman to represent the 7th District of Tennessee, the very seat that I hold right now, is a guy named Sam Houston. Sam Houston, along with a lot of other Tennessee volunteers, came down to Texas and fought to help win Texas its independence. And today, Texas is undergoing another invasion. All our border states need everything that we can give them. Joe Biden's disastrous open border policies has turned operational control of the U.S. southern border over to the drug cartels. Using mass waves of coyote-directed people, the cartels neutralize CBP, forcing them to thin the line in remote areas and concentrate their forces at human crossing sites. The cartels then push waves of camouflaged, carpet shoe-wearing mules across the remote areas of the border with backpacks filled with fentanyl. That fentanyl killed nearly 108,000 Americans just last year. Further, President Biden, in his quest to change the landscape of America, has allowed in the past year, if you count gotaways and encounters, 3.5 million people to illegally come into the United States. People from as far away as Russia and the Middle East. Think about that. There are 21 states in our nation whose population is less than 3.3 million. He's allowing a moderate-sized state into the nation every year. The added costs and uncompensated health care, the massive demand on social services is destroying opportunities for less fortunate Americans. I was in Mexico meeting with elected leaders this weekend, and they shared the horrible experiences of human trafficking, young girls and boys being raped, and how people making the trek through Mexico resort to crime to pay their way, many recruited to be mules just as I described above. We're here to shine a light on the destruction being wrought on all our states because Joe Biden has turned every state into a border state. To shine a light on the destruction to American families caused by the cartels poisoning drugs. To shine a light on the policy that is destroying our country by overwhelming communities like El Paso, Killeen, Texas, where I lived for many years, and Nashville, where we now reside. It has to stop now. We assure the American people we will shine a light on this in the next few months. Secretary Mayorkas, resign. If not, we're coming and we will hold you accountable. I'll be followed by my dear friend from Florida, Kat Kamick.
Well, good afternoon. I proudly represent the Sunshine State, and a lot of people have asked me, what are you doing in Texas? Well, this is not my first border trip. I've been here several times. And every time I think that it's going to get better, it's actually getting worse. See, on my very first trip to the border, I met a 9-year-old little girl. She tried to tell me her name, but she couldn't. Her vocal cords had given out because she was screaming so loud while being raped repeatedly by cartel members. On my second trip, I came back. She was still in custody. I don't know what happened to her. I have heard stories that would keep you up at night. Stories that make your stomach turn, that make you want to vomit. Little children who have been abused, raped, sodomized. This is happening every single day. Yesterday, I was helping build a memorial in my district with the parents who have lost children to fentanyl poisoning. Today, I stand at ground zero, where that same fentanyl has been coming across absolutely uninhibited. 12 miles of border here in El Paso, as we stand here, are being left open. There is not a single agent on the line as we stand here. I know that because I have just talked to the agents who told me, one, this border, it is not secure. And anyone who tells you differently is lying. Second, the folks that want to come here, they're waiting for an agent to get on the line because they know once they are processed, they are paroled into the country where they have a 5-year court date that they never show up for. It's like winning the lottery. And that 12 miles just around the corner from here that has no agents on the line, it's open season for those that want to bring drugs and commit crimes in this country. This is a real problem, and it has been ignored by Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas. Not only has Secretary Mayorkas lied to me and my colleagues on the House Homeland Security Committee, but he has absolutely disrespected every man and woman who wears this uniform. You all are members of the press. You're standing amongst monuments that are dedicated to agents who have lost their lives in the line of duty. Just this week, we lost 3. How many more monuments do we have to add before someone will do something? It's time to take action. Alejandro Mayorkas must resign. And if he doesn't, we will make him. Thank you.
You know, the president said that maybe he's been by the border one time in the last 40 years. But he's created one of the greatest crises. It's something that can be fixed. Republicans have put out long ago an all-the-above approach. Fully fund an effective border enforcement strategy, including physical infrastructure, advanced technology along the border, and bolstering Border Patrol. We don't need more IRS agents. We need more Border Patrol agents. Enforce Title 42. Remain in Mexico policy. End catch and release. Require legal status to get a job. Eliminate welfare incentives. That would be just the beginning. With that, let's open it up for questions.
Is Operation Stonewatch still in effect? And if it is it effective at all?
You guys want to take it? Tony?
Stone Garden is a federal grant program. House Republicans have been pushing to increase that. House Democrats have kept that the same for 3 years. I imagine we're going to increase that funding. Many of I represent 42% of the southern border. I have 29 counties. Many of my counties, the sheriffs, the local law enforcement are doing the heavy lifting. One of the things that we were able to accomplish in the minority is out of that $90 million was to bring over $45 million of that to Texas. So that's a start. A lot of times these funds are the only thing that's keeping these small law enforcement offices the funds that they need in order to accomplish the job. That needs to increase. I have a bill that increases Stone Garden to $180 million. But money isn't enough. It's pretty damn simple. You know how this problem goes away? You simply enforce the laws that are already on the books. That's what we're asking for. No new money, no new laws. Enforce the laws that are already on the books. And if you don't do that, we will find somebody who will.
It's very clear when you talk to the border agents. If you simply send people back, they stop coming. It's simply if you stop tying the hands of the ICE, people will stop coming. Yes?
Mr. McCarthy, two questions. Number one is there a timeline for Mayorkas to resign?
January 3rd. When we take power, we'll start the investigation. We'll look at every order. We'll look at every means of what he has done. He has lied to the American public. This investigation could lead to an impeachment inquiry. Yes.
The Republican colleagues introduced a resolution to audit the aid sent to Ukraine. Do you support that resolution?
Yes, I support auditing every single tax dollar spent by Congress. This is hard-working taxpayer money. We should make sure no matter where we spend money that it's audited and spent wisely. Yes, ma'am.
And for places like El Paso, it was mentioned about how much money has been spent on this. I mean, is the House going to support getting that money funded?
Yes, we will support that. Also, think for a moment if your own governor didn't take action. It'd be much more than $4 million. He's put the National Guard. He's tried to build barriers at the same time. But who fought him? The Biden administration and Secretary of Homeland. When the cartels shot bullets at the National Guard, and Mayorkas still says this border is secure, when every day you can find human trafficking. By what Mayorkas has created, he's made America be that final link in helping human trafficking. That has got to stop. Yes, sir.
What specific crimes would you be investigating for a potential impeachment trial?
Well, we first take the investigation, the orders, lying to the American public, withholding ICE from doing their job, not following through on what the laws on the books are today. We never do impeachment for political purposes. We're having an investigation. We know exactly what Secretary Mayorkas has done. We've watched it across this nation, something that's never happened before. We watched him time and again before a committee say this border is secure, and we can't find one border agent who agrees with him. So we will investigate. If the investigation leads to an impeachment inquiry, we will follow through. Thank you and appreciate it.